What up? What up? It's good to see y'all today. Jake, it's great to see you, man.
Good to be seen.
We got the third amigo today. Dan and I just carrying this thing. We're being LeBron James, and we're just carrying this thing together. So we're good to have Jake back. I'm just gonna
two of you together are still aren't LeBron. So
that's very, very true.
That's for sure. Yeah.
But for those of you tuned in, welcome to Unicorn Finders. If you're probably like, what the heck is this thing? What this thing is basically an excuse for Jake, Dan, and I to hang out every week, to be totally honest with you.
Sure.
Jake, Dan, and I are good friends outside of work.
And bring new friends.
Yeah, exactly. And make new friends. Exactly. But Jake, Dan, and I have been at Vaco for, I'd say 10, each of us 10 plus years at this point. And we've built a pretty great community within each of our ecosystems. And so what we want to do is we wanted to bring those ecosystems together and showcase the people in our community doing really cool stuff. So that being said, we have somebody doing really cool stuff that is pizza themed. We'll get to that in a second. But Brian, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive in, dude. First off, quick background about yourself, and then tell us what OpenSauced.pizza is.
Woo! Yeah. So I go by BW on the internet, but Brian Douglas is my given name. And I've working on this little cool pizza project called OpenSauced. Previously, got a finance degree in 2008, had no network, could not get a job. So I went to sales, and then 4 years doing sales down in Clearwater, Florida, IT equipment. Took that into an MBA, and then learned how to code.
Let me guess, it was at Tech Data.
Tech Data. There you go.
Oh, stop.
Yeah. We're practically neighbors growing up. Yeah, we gotta chop it up after the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, did that for 4 years, and then learned how to code while getting my MBA. And worked at startups ever since, and eventually found my way into GitHub for almost 5 years, pre-Microsoft. Got to see what an acquisition looks like, which was pretty cool. I drive a nicer car now. Working on OpenSauced, which is a platform to empower engineering leaders, hiring managers to find some of the best talent in one of the hardest places to compete, which is open source.
That's awesome.
I love that. Who wants to take the first question? Because I know we have a lot of them.
Yeah, I'll ask. Brian, why don't you tell everybody what you guys are trying to accomplish? What's the need and the market, and how are you guys trying to fill that hole?
Yeah, so the original need, I built OpenSauced. I got the domain in 2016. That's where the .pizza comes from, and I was really just trying to do more open source. So like the real need is like getting more people to realize that open source, like you mentioned LeBron James when we were chopping it up and introing. But like if LeBron was doing pickup games and your goal was to get in the NBA, like you go play pickup with LeBron. And when you look at like all the people you've had technically, like you mentioned the remix guys, like those are maybe not LeBron, like I don't know, Michael and Ryan, they're up there. Kent's also up there too as well. But like that squad is like the elite squad. So like why not go work on the remix and contribute upstream to some of their stuff and their extensions? So the goal really is like show the developer there's a possibility to expand your resume that doesn't require about doing like what I call resume driven development, which is like you're doing React at work, but you're like, oh no, I'm going to do Svelte now because I know Svelte's hot. And then your engineering manager is like, I don't think this is going to work out. Go find a new job. So getting folks to do open source and sort of build that sort of discovery engine for them, and then make it easier for folks to find them.
That's so good, man. Yeah, there's so much about just navigating when you first dive into open source, just in general, right? And so helping to kind of spearhead some of the just connectivity piece, right? Once you're in, I feel like you're in, right? There's people, and then you're like, oh yeah, you're one of us, and let's go. But really, kind of that first initial leap. And so you're coming from the other side of that, where you've got people that are trying to, really maximize that new network and that collaboration, right? And for the betterment of their companies as well, and that's really what that's all about. And so that's really cool. How did this come about? Like when were you just like, this is what we need to do. This is what we're missing. Yeah, we love a good origin story. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, so the origin is I used to work for this small company called Netlify, which is crazy because they're huge now. But yeah, I was employee number 3 there. I got sort of roped into becoming a full stack dev there, third hire, and then eventually left as the first developer experience engineer, which is kind of like a hybrid developer advocate, like pre-sales role, but still ship code. And So I was just doing a lot more engagement in open source, getting people to use Netlify. And I saw there's like a pattern, like if people just kind of trust you and could like validate it, you're just not going to ship code and disappear. Like you're in, like it's like you're part of the crew. If you just show that you're just a real person. So once I figured that out, I started doing way more open source, and that's what got me into GitHub. Like GitHub saw what I was doing, invited me to work there. Which literally they invited me to work there. I did interview a couple rounds, but at that point I saw how it really worked, kind of how the sausage was made. And like my role doing developer relations there was like engage with all open source maintainers, all the top ones you've heard of. I'd engage with them and just become friends with them and find out what features were missing. And some of the features that were missing is like, how do you manage a community that's outside the main bread and butter of the company? How do you keep that sort of inflection of documentation and SDKs to still go? And like the answer, it is community. Like you've got to build an ecosystem of people who are interested in contributing. And then when I saw that sort of pattern, I was like, wow, there's something here. So in 2020, I actually started live streaming on Twitch and building OpenSauced, the last version, live in front of people.
Wow.
I built that and built a community to about 850 people in a Discord. And those are my contributors. Those are the folks that I could ask questions to. And those are the folks that we started hiring when I peeled off and did this full time.
Wow. Brian, I got a question. Obviously, you know, I'm really big on networking and community building and whatnot. I think open source contributions is something I don't talk a lot about because I'm just not an engineer and it's not something top of my head. Like I'm like, connect with people on LinkedIn and Twitter and yada, yada. Talk about the importance of like being involved in the open source community because I mean, you've built a business off of it. And I know a lot of people talk about it's just such an amazing way to get discovered and found out.
Yeah. And I would say like, it's not a requirement in the industry. Like you don't have to do open source to succeed as an engineer. 100% could just like be, they call them dark matter developers. Like you ship code every day, you do your job, you go home, you play with your kids. But for me, I was at the time I switched from doing sales at Tech Data to full-time engineering. I was 27 years old. So like I already had a whole career prior. So like for me to level up, I had to go find what the secret sauce was. And that secret sauce is connecting with some of the best engineers and the best communities out there and saying, hey, I got some spare cycles. I can do some contributions in the weekend. I was lucky enough to have jobs that I can contribute at work during the day. So that's the majority of my contributions. But every single software, like including StreamYard, what we're using right now, and everything that's hosted on LinkedIn, like LinkedIn was built on Ember.js, like all of the front end components.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And like I lucked out of being able to, I ran into the founders or the co-creators of LinkedIn, or sorry, not LinkedIn, but Ember. And I found out that they were just consultants. Like they built a framework, but then they consulted with folks like LinkedIn and other, like Twitch was another big Ember user back in the day.
Yeah.
And you're able to, like you pull it in like 5-figure deals to support open source software other places. So like once you understand, like there's like layers on this onion, like there's a reason for people to like leverage open source to not just expand your skill set or your resume, but also expand your opportunity. And that is what got me into and like really interested in like, hey, I can get involved. I can get like sort of a shortcut into advancing my career just by talking to people who built the thing that I'm using.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when we were rapidly growing, and we're still growing pretty quick, but when we were rapidly growing, and we just did not have time to go through like our full interview processes. That some of the time it was just like, how green is your GitHub right now? Like we're not going to talk to anyone really that if they're not full green for at least the last 60 days, you know, a shade of it, right? And you know, because it just made it see we wanted to find tinkerers, people that want to think outside the box, that want to solve problems, you know. And if you're intrinsically motivated to solve problems, you're going to go find a problem if you don't have one, you know. And being able to contribute to an open source project is a great way to do that, you know, with people all around the world, which is incredible.
Hey, Brian, I want to get to Becky's question. What are your thoughts on this? Open source is something I've been interested in, but it feels intimidating still being entry level, early career dev. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and this is something that it comes up a lot. So like even like what was mentioned just before, like the green squares. Like green squares is a really good thing to look at really quickly. But like OpenSauced on our landing page, like we want to be more than green squares.
Oh yeah.
So what we just shipped yesterday was highlights. And I'll get to Becky's question in a second, but these highlights are really meant to showcase like your skill set and like where you're coming from. So like if you only have one dark green square like 6 months ago, like create that as a highlight and talk about that story of like, hey, I got a lot of time. Like when my daughter was born, I had like I got 5 months off paternal leave. So I had a lot of time to go work on OpenSauced. That's actually the inception back in 2018 is like when I really started working on the idea. But what I'm getting at for Becky, one of the best first contributions is actually not code. Like if you find an up and coming project, something that's like on the sort of growth stage, about to hit that hockey stick of adoption, an intro to XYZ blog posts would go miles further than a random bug fix. And the reason for that is like open source. I'm going to say this, but I'm going to get a lot of pushback on Hacker News. Like open source is marketing. So if you can get somebody to do intro to XYZ project, that is going to extend the reach of your entire open source ethos, your brand, your project. So I encourage like Becky, like when you sign up to OpenSauced, you pick your interest. We're going to expand this. Like we're just getting started, but we're starting to design our recommendation engine now, where we can recommend projects that are on their growth stage.
Cool. That's so cool, man. I love that. I got goosebumps.
Because people don't know where to start, right?
Exactly.
Really, there's so much, right? And you need to find a safe place too, to kind of like jump in, right?
And that's why we started with the Discord. Like we wanted a safe place for people to talk about the idea of open source and where to get started. And then like we invite maintainers to come join us in our Discord to be like, so like Joshua K. Goldberg, he currently is full-time doing open source, always looking for folks to help partner with them and collaborate with them. The challenge with Josh is like, he doesn't know Becky from Rachel to Stephanie. So like, how can Becky approach someone who wants to be a mentor? It's just by showcasing what you've done already or what you want to do. And it's put yourself out there.
So Brian, let me ask you this. So how do you make money, right? So let's talk about that. I mean, can a hiring manager or a company purchase a license to OpenSauced, and then basically they can fill in all the requirements they need? I mean, talk about, I guess, essentially walk through, from purchase to implementation, how that works.
Yeah. So currently what we have is just a dashboard. So we have a SaaS product, monthly fee. And that monthly fee gets you access to things like reports. So anything exporting CSVs off the platform is required to be a paid feature. And then we're going to be adding advanced filtering. So if you're looking for, my example is Rust developers at Portland, because you want to host an event or you want to invite people to our stream.
By the way, that combo just makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Like, you said that backstage and I giggled. I was like, yeah, that's like perfect.
Yeah. And or .NET developers in Seattle. I don't know. But basically, like if you want to like filter down into like, you just want to get in front of the developers doing the thing, that feature, we're actually still in design mode right now, but hopefully be shipping that by April. And then we have a feature shipping next month. Everything we're doing is open source. So like there's no secret sauce behind the mix. But like we'll have a collaboration feature as well. So part of that monthly fee will also include how many collaborations you can reach out to. So as a free user, you can get like I think we're aiming at like 2 to 3 that you can reach out to developers per month. And a paid would be, we're still working in the numbers, what makes sense. But I think we'll start with unlimited for paid just to see if the feature is useful for folks.
Now, on the other side of it, if I'm a contributor, is there something that I should be looking out for to be found on OpenSauced? Like, what does that side of the marketplace look like?
Yeah, so as a contributor, and this is similar for anybody who works at a company, we have these insight pages, and these insight pages give you insight into open source repositories. So like one thing that sort of sets us apart from any other sort of community-led growth type platform, like an Orbit or Common Room, is that we have the industry-wide insights. And so you could find this repo or that repo and do some pattern matching. So if you know Remix is an interesting technology and you have interesting devs coming out of the Remix community and you want to find more of them, like you create a page that has Remix in it, you have one that has maybe Redwood.js and maybe like Next.js all in one dashboard. And then that way you can start doing more of your filtering and sourcing of like who's writing code, who should I reach out to, who could I ask for questions? Like if I'm just an individual contributor and I'm seeing this one rock star dev that's shipping code week over week, like now I know exactly who to reach out to inside of a Discord. And that's the challenge at GitHub today, is like you only see the top contributors all time. So that could have been a top contributor in 2019. That could have been a top contributor yesterday. Like there's no way to filter that out. Well, there technically is a way to filter out, but it's kind of convoluted right now on GitHub. So we're just trying to make that process easier for contributors and for maintainers and for folks looking to scale their team.
Man,
that's so fun.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I'd also point out that today we don't really have a great solution for like recruiters or agencies and stuff like that. We definitely will talk offline more about that and how to please. How to have a proper setup for folks like yourselves. But we're in research development mode right now. So we're talking to as many companies that we can to get feedback and make sure we're building the right product for the most people.
I love that.
You think about, just integrating with LinkedIn alone, just as an interesting.
I was thinking about that.
I was ranked on OpenSauced because of X, Y, and Z too. Just that. That's cool. Well, let's talk about like growth and trajectory here for a little bit. Where did where you at from users? What is that challenge? What is some of the challenges towards growth? We have a lot of founders or soon to be founders or experts, that listen to the show, and so just a little bit about your growth story and
I'd say that we built this project originally for DigitalOcean, and the reason for that is that we built it for Hacktoberfest for them to get insights and that everyone contributing in this 1 month hackathon in open source. That's what built our platform, the new platform we have today. And we didn't have a login. We didn't have any way to pay for it until December. So since December, we've grown to just yesterday 1,000 developers on the platform.
That's awesome.
And we're seeing since January, we're seeing 30% month-over-month growth. And we can attribute that to just like one is the layoffs. Like it's a hard time right now for a lot of tech workers because you're getting laid off. But like what a lot of our content has been around, if you got 6 months severance and you have some time, why not do open source? And that's been resonating.
Stay sharp.
Well. Yeah, exactly.
Pivot your skills, stay relevant. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is like we built a marketing arm. We have a YouTube channel. We've got a Twitter. Well, LinkedIn is actually our number one funnel for top of funnel for folks, mainly based on our current market. So yeah, we just sort of double down on the content, the clips. Y'all know this, but yeah, the content, it works. And so just getting the story out there.
Yeah. No, this isn't content. This is just friends talking. Yeah, we're not going to.
Hey, Brian, as we kind of wind down a little bit here, and again, thank you so much for coming on. Anything else that you want to highlight with OpenSauced and kind of maybe what y'all have coming out, or just anything else?
Yeah, I would say if you're listening and this is at all resonating to you, I'd love for you to get on OpenSauced.pizza, scroll to the bottom, subscribe to our newsletter. But also connect your GitHub account. So if you're a developer looking for your next thing or just trying to be part of the ecosystem, contribute to open source projects, connect your GitHub account today. We'll be setting up some pretty cool updates, some new features in the next couple of weeks. So we've got the momentum going, and we've got a great team. So I'm looking forward to starting to ship some of this stuff to the world.
And Brian, what's your Twitter handle real quick again?
BDougieYo.
BDougieYo.
Is that right?
That is it.
Cool. Go follow Brian.
Sure to follow Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Go follow Brian. Brian, we thank you, man. Really, really appreciate it. Actually, last question. I always do like an advice question. A lot of founders we've had on this show have come from big tech, right? And have moved to start their own thing. What's your biggest piece of advice for people who maybe sit in an idea, who are working at a kind of a stable company? What's your biggest piece of advice for them?
Yeah, network. One of the best things I did was like the C-levels, the CEOs, COO, all knew me by first name. Sorry, they knew me by BDougie because I went by BDougie internally at GitHub.
I love that.
So I was the Beyonce of GitHub for the entire 4.5 years I was there, almost 5 years. That needs to be on
the title of your LinkedIn, the Beyonce of GitHub.
Yeah, I still claim it. And so that network, what I built while I was at GitHub, I was able to create a soft landing into my first angel investment. So like we did take angel investment last summer, and that's what sustained us and got us to this point. And now that we proceed into revenue and started getting more adoption, those are also our advisors and champions as well. So like talk to your boss, ask him for your first angel check, which is super helpful.
That's awesome.
That's such a great thing. And, I know we were about to wrap on this, just wanted to hit on that real quick because we do talk about like the importance of community where you are, right? And there's so much that it's easy to kind of like push back if you're wanting to leave somewhere instead of lean into the people at the company you're at around, right? And so, can you just either encourage, correct move, whatever you want to say to listeners on this, where it's, how do you make sure that you're leaning in, and maximizing that network? We've talked about networking for years on here and that importance. Most of us have found all of our opportunities through a friend and not, right.
Yeah.
So it's like, can you just talk a little bit about networking, that building that?
Yeah, I'd say like the hashtag that we got. So I'm in Techstars right now, and the thing that their whole motto is give first. So the idea is like,
wow,
offer up your skill set and your expertise first before you start asking for stuff. And that's how I operate. Like my DMs are always open for folks. If you're trying to sort of navigate some space or you want to get some feedback on whatever interview process is, like I'll give you 15 minutes of my time. I got a Calendly. I can ship you pretty quickly. So giving first is like how you build that network and build that friend group, or build that sort of landing pad you can stand on next. So one thing I did when I moved to San Francisco is I built a podcast called This Developing Story, and I would reach out to like random people I looked up to, and knowing that most people who have a persona or a following, they get asked the same questions over and over again. So like the way I give first for them was like, hey, I do a podcast. I ask 3 questions. These are just 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you got here? Podcast is only 30 minutes, and I'll put it out to my entire ecosystem, and you can always point to it to answer all questions that come to you. And that's how I pitched it, and was able to rub shoulders with some of the biggest folks in the industry by just doing that. And at the time when I was doing it, I had like 70 downloads a week, which is like almost nothing for a podcast. I grew it to a lot larger, but like I just gave a platform for people just to like stop answering the same questions over and over again.
Yeah, that's so good, man. Yeah, it was great meeting you. Thanks for taking time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. All right, Brian. Definitely. Let's chat the next day or two about some staffing stuff. We definitely would be down to be some research for you. Okay.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
Cheers.
All right.
Give first.
I love that. Accidentally, actually, I think I just instead of removing Brian from the studio, I think I just kicked him out. So Brian,
I banned him forever.
I am sorry. I just said kick out. I do apologize, Brian. Please continue watching. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Really exciting stuff. Yeah.
I have heard about OpenSauced. Obviously, Brian I met at Render last year, and I've actually been following Brian for a bit on Twitter and love everything he puts out. Obviously thinking about this from a staffing perspective, and obviously Jake from a consulting perspective like yourself, obviously is just as huge as well. But I think we all know and we all talk about all the time, the hiring process is broken. And it's never going to be perfect, but I think if you could leverage tools and be creative with tools like OpenSauced, I think you can get close.
Well, and it is still about ultimately empowering community. Like this is technology first, but the purpose of it is to make human connections through technology, right? And so all of that's the beauty of just the open source community in general. It's not just called, this is open source. Let's say this is open source community, right? And what does that mean, right? And so, I kind of embodying that and, taking it to the next level is really neat, to see that happen. You can't go through the world alone, right? So, how do you partner up?
And for those of y'all who are watching, we would definitely love your thoughts too. Again, with Jake, Dan, and I kind of hang out afterwards just to kind of give our thoughts on the product. So for anybody who's still watching, definitely throw up your comments and your thoughts on the product. Dan, I didn't know if you had any thoughts as well, just about OpenSauced and kind of what Brian's doing.
No, I mean, you guys asked some great questions, so I just kind of sat back. I think it's an incredible idea, right? And community is exceptionally important. Usability and connection, back to that community is just it's so hard, but it seems like he made it so easy, right? And Becky mentioned something, and I think there was another comment in there too about the 101 piece and about getting involved and how do I jump into this world that can seem so overbearing, or how do I not get buried, right? Like GitHub is great, but GitHub is also a place that you can get lost and you can be a great developer and you can just get lost in, in the muck there. And, I think what they're really trying to do is make it a, significantly more user friendly, both on the, the contributor side, as well as in the ability to not only like recruit talent, but connect to talent, right? I mean, it's not always about, hey, I need to hire a Rust developer in Portland. Sometimes it's, hey, we've got a team of Rust developers in Portland that are sitting on an island by themselves. The rest of the company is in Omaha, Nebraska, right? Would love for them to get involved in the community, and how can we connect them with other people, right? Like there's so much, and I love the way that software development's going right now. Is it seems like so much of it is driving to a community and driving towards working as a group of people, whether you're employees together or not, but really driving and learning from one another, because I mean, no software developer knows it all, right? So let's use tools that allow us to access information. Let's use tools to find, people that are doing similar things. And then let's use tools that we can use to plug into our business to make it operate it, more efficiently and everything else. Right. So, I mean, it's a fantastic idea, a fantastic product. I know that, building a dual-sided marketplace can be a challenge, but it seems like they're doing well.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, gents. Well, it was good hanging with y'all. Hey, for everybody who showed up today, thank you. Brian, if you're still watching, this was probably our most attended session in a while. So definitely a lot of interest around the open source, OpenSauced community. Jake, and Dan have a group text going, and we were actually texting while Brian was talking, and we were talking about trying to get maybe more open source advocates on the show, and kind of talking about building community from that perspective. So I think we're going to kind of work on that. But for the upcoming weeks, listen, we're very blessed. We're pretty much booked all the way through the end of April at this point, and we're booking into May, which is super exciting. We have a lot of amazing guests coming on. Yeah. So also too, if you want to be involved and just want to be more involved with the community, please send me, Jake, or Dan a DM, and we will definitely get you involved. I mean, we're trying to do things a little differently. We're trying to go a little bit more kind of supporting our founders a little bit. But if you are young in your career and you want a networking opportunity and you want to help us create community with founders, please reach out to us because we need all the help we can get. And we would love to have ambassadors and advocates for unicorn finders. So cool.
Thanks.
All right.
Like, follow, subscribe, all the things to say.
There it is.
Let's go. Tell your friends, share it.
Yeah. I love it.
We'll see you next week.
Dan's obviously in high demand. So, all right. We love y'all. We'll see y'all next week.
Guys.
Peace.